delight to be here with my colleague Professor Varadan. My name is Mahesh. I'll just take a few minutes to talk about, I'm sure the question on everybody's mind is Institute A, branch B or Institute C, branch D. ABCD మీరేమైనా పెట్టుకోవచ్చు. Right? That's the fundamental question in everybody's mind. So I want to discuss the framework in which you can arrive at a decision. I cannot tell you IIT Bombay chemical engineering versus VIT computer science. I cannot tell you. I cannot tell you VIT computer science versus SNU mechanical engineering. I'm not in a position to comment on that. But I can tell you, I will try and discuss a framework in which you can arrive at your own decisions. Okay? Now, before I go into the framework, I want to discuss a piece of research that I don't know how many of you know that I think is relevant to this framework. How many of you have heard of a Nobel laureate called Daniel Kahneman? Okay, about 2 of us, 3. Okay? Daniel Kahneman was an economist. He was at the University of Chicago. He passed away some years ago, very recently. He studied behavioral economics. How do we buy things? Okay, what is our psychological process in buying? We spend money and buy, right? So he was an experimental behavioral economist. That is, he did experiments with real people making real decisions. I'll give you a fascinating experiment that I consider fascinating that led him to his Nobel Prize. He went to a primary school with 5th grade students. There was a long corridor. All the 5th graders would come out during break. They would loiter around. In the middle of the corridor, he had a volunteer sitting with a bowl of chocolates. Okay? And they said, take one, was the big sign in front of it. So children would come, take one. Just before they were going to take one, the volunteer would say, you can take one now or come back next week and take 10. Okay? It's just a verbal cue to the child, 5th grade child, right? And he did this experiment when he was very young. As it turns out, very, very small number of kids chose the 10x option. Very small. He did this over a large enough sample. And the reason people get Nobel Prizes is not for a chocolate experiment like this. But he tracked these students, these young kids, for 20 some years after that, 20, 30 years after that, if I'm not mistaken, and saw their career paths. The people who chose the 10x chocolate 1 week later were leaders of organizations. The people that chose the one chocolate today, here and now, were working for the people that chose the 10x chocolate. Okay? Now each parent, each child, each student in this room can take away whatever you choose to take away from this experiment. But one of the core tenets that he proposed is this idea of delayed gratification is always undervalued in our minds. Right? If somebody told you stock market in India is going to go up minimum 12%, minimum, I can stand here and guarantee and tell you, next 40 years, this India is going to see a 12% stock market for the next 40 years. Not on any 5-year cycle, not on any 2-year cycle, certainly not on a 1-year cycle. But on a 40-year cycle, this is what is expected. Now, how many of you will continue to stay invested for a 40-year duration and reap the 12%? The people that did are, you can see them here today. In spite of seeing them here today, if you went, Manish is a good friend, he's from the finance. How many people will choose the 40-year 12% option? Very few. So we tend to undervalue delayed gratification. As human beings, it's a problem with the way we are wired. Okay? Now, I don't want to beat around the bush. I'll come to the core idea that I want to lay in front of you, the framework. The most important decision, the most important factor you should think about whichever decision, whichever branch you choose, whichever institute you choose, whichever discipline you choose, should be based, in my mind, on three factors. One, is this the place where I will be surrounded by the best students? Okay, so if I go there, will I be surrounded by people like me? First reason to choose wherever you want to go. Second, whatever is the branch that you are going to choose at that place, if somebody told you, you have to work for 40 years in that discipline, there is no branch change in life. If somebody told you, there is no branch change in life, choose wisely now as a 17, 18-year-old, that's it, that's your life. What would you choose? Second, that is the second factor. If you chose this, if you really understood the second factor, you would immediately understand, you would do that irrespective of what the remuneration is in that field, because it's just something you absolutely thoroughly enjoy doing. Now, the third factor is there scope to continue learning forever in this profession? Forever. The key word is forever. Not for the first 1, 2, 3, 5 years. Forever. These are the three factors you should understand. First, will I be surrounded by good students? You tell me who your peer group is and I'll tell you who you are. Second, is this a field I will absolutely love to be part of, irrespective of any other persuasion around me? Third, is there an opportunity to continually learn something new in this profession? If the answer to all three is yes, you are in a safe place. If you made a decision based on any sense of immediate gratification, you are not really being rational in your decision. You think you are being rational. Now, why do we talk? What is the package at the end of graduating after 4 years? Why do we talk package? Somebody told you, yes, your first year package, I'm giving you in writing today. Okay, you tell me what your JE rank is. I'll tell you, 4 years from now, I will hire you for 18 LPA. I'll give that to you in writing now. Okay, 18 LPA, the median salary at any IIT is 15 LPA. You are 18 LPA for me. Will you sign on? How many of you will sign on today? You've not even set foot into college. I'm a good businessman. I'm giving you an offer. I will hire you for 18 LPA today. How many of you will sign on? I didn't see even one hand go up. Well, no, the median is slightly less than 18. I'm promising more than the median. I'll promise 30% more than whatever your median is. Nobody is willing to sign on today. Why? If that is the case, why will you sign on today based on some median salary of some institution 4 years from now? Makes absolutely no sense. At least my offer is a real written offer where I will start paying you 18 LPA irrespective of what that day's offer, what that day's condition is. For all I care, Ukraine and Europe would have gone to war and we would be in a third world war and I am in a recession. But I am willing to stand by my commitment and pay 18 LPA. I am taking a risk, but none of you want to take that risk with me. Right? The reason is you feel you have a better offer out there. Part of our irrationality. The only thing you have to remember is, am I continuously going to learn something new every day? So the rationale behind asking first year pay package, what is going to be my first year pay package, is if the first year pay package is high, there is a good chance that the 10th year pay package will also be higher. Two candidates, candidate 1 idiot, candidate 2 bright fellow. Bright fellow's pay package is better than the idiot's pay package. 10th year, you still think the idiot was getting paid less than the bright fellow. That's our framework. If somebody told you crossovers happen always in life, people cross over, trajectories cross over, first year doesn't matter, initial conditions don't matter at all. If somebody told you that, you would say, no, I'm not sure. I like a data point where I believe in, like all of you have done math, right? Monotonicity, continuous, smooth and differentiable. So everything is nice, smooth, differentiable, monotonicity. I'm not expecting any crossovers. Life is not monotonic, smooth and differentiable. There is all kinds of crossovers that happen. Crossovers happen based on what? Why will this fellow who started at a lower pay package cross over you, the bright person who chose the higher pay package? Because that person has learned something that is suddenly come into demand. Right? That's when you cross over. If I have learned something that is suddenly in market demand, people are looking for someone like you, they'll pay a slightly heftier salary to bring you on board. So this idea of continuously learning is an extremely important factor, should be an important factor in your decision making. I was talking to somebody yesterday that said it more eloquently than I can ever think of. Every 1 year, we have one free trip around the sun, right? All of us go have one free round trip around the sun. And we age 1 year. If you do 5 years of work in a job, you should ask yourself, do I have 5 years experience in that job or 1 year experience repeated 5 times? If you are doing the same thing every year for 5 consecutive years, and I'll tell you, you go out into the market today, there are dime a dozen jobs out there that are 1 year experience repeated every year back. You rinse, repeat again. Rinse, repeat again. You have 1 year experience forever and ever and ever. You don't have 5 years experience. People who age meaning you're just aging due to the free trips around the sun. Your salary also goes up, but nothing like the person who is really gaining experience. Crossovers happen between people who are aging and people who are gaining experience. This is a factor that we don't tend to consider. There are 2 aspects. One is the Daniel Kahneman model of delayed gratification, based on something that is going to happen long time from now based on your own self-effort being undervalued and undervaluing your own idea of experience. So if you are the kind that will continuously learn, you will absolutely outpace everyone else in the market. Last point I want to leave you all with, and I'll let my colleague also share his thoughts before we answer questions, is I said this in one of the conversations with Amrit, who is part of Nikhil's team. Each of us gets paid in 2 currencies. There is one currency that falls in your bank account called salary. It happens at the first of every month for most of us. There is a second currency called satisfaction, achievement, contribution, that is not monetizable. It's not quantifiable, but monetizable. It is monetizable in a delayed gratification model, not quantifiable immediately. We tend to undervalue that. We tend to, in fact, discount that completely. Take a civil engineer who built up this whole knowledge city here. There are probably a dozen civil engineers who were at the core of this T-Hub, the building we are in. 40 years from now, this building would have produced thousands of startups. Imagine the pride of that dozen civil engineers who said, I had a role to play in this 1,000 startups which had their roots here in T-Hub. Is there some satisfaction in telling your grandchildren, I had a role to play in this massive structure that is today's icon? We tend to undervalue that. So don't find a model where you can equally value both in your own head. If you are not doing this, if you are simply running like an animal behind the cheese that smells, a rat that runs behind the cheese that smells the most, right? You are really no different from a rat. None of us are rats in this room. Remember, there is more to us, and that we are here to really make a contribution. Okay? I can't not help but make this one last point, if you don't mind, Varadan, sorry. Imagine you are in a job interview. Okay? So there's a company person interviewing you, and you are seeking a job. What is the agenda of the company person? One of you can please help me with an answer. What is the main 2-3 thoughts in the company person's mind? Yes, sir.
Will he be able to do what I want properly?
will he be able to do what I want? Will he be a positive contributor to the team? What is the candidate's frame of mind?
How do I impress him, and how do I make him think that I'm capable?
You're actually in a very good position. I'm glad if most people thought like that. Usually, in a conversation like that, what is the Aam Aadmi's thinking there? You help me with the Aam Aadmi's thinking, not your thinking. What is the salary that this fellow will pay me for it? Right? There is clearly a mismatch of agenda. If you go to buy a box of surf from a supermarket, there is a buyer and a seller. What is the agenda of the buyer? To buy that surf at the cheapest price. What is the agenda of the seller? To sell that surf at the highest price. There is no mismatch in the agenda. The agenda is price. Very clear. In this case, there is a mismatch in the agenda. The mismatch in the agenda is a major problem. If everybody thought like him, please have a seat. If everybody thought, how can I impress this person to become that I can be the positive contributor that person is looking for, there is no mismatch in the agenda. But if that person is thinking contribution and I am thinking salary, and only salary, clearly there is a mismatch in the agenda. And so either that person will not be happy after a while, or you are not happy after a while. And happiness is not something you can buy with money. I can say this categorically. I'm sure this is not the first time you are hearing this. This won't be the last time you'll be hearing this. Good. Any questions on people's minds? High level questions. Please don't ask Institute A branch B versus Institute C branch D. Those are questions I'm happy to help with that also, but over dinner or some other smaller group conversation.
Sir, so the second factor that you stated, you said we should take a branch that we would be willing to do for 40 years. So when you were around our age, how did you know that you want to pursue whatever branch you decided to take?
Well, I didn't know. Let's be honest here, right? So, but the difference was back when I was a 19-year-old, I think it's time I impress all of you here also. I'm an IIT Madras graduate from the class of 1992. So I wrote JEE in Osmania University College of Engineering as the center in 1988 April. I got a JEE rank that got me into IIT Madras Mechanical Engineering. I studied mechanical engineering, went abroad, did my thing and came back. So the answer is no. I didn't know that mechanical engineering was this amazing calling in my life. That's not the frame of mind I want you to go into. Whatever you think you want to do today, if you invest in that, over time, what you want to do at every point in life will also evolve. That in itself is not wrong. But doing something that you are only halfway interested in today is doing yourself an injustice. Today, I am a mechanical engineer. I work in this field called fluid dynamics. So I was a very traditional fluid dynamicist. I've solved some industry problems. I've done my research. Today, I work mostly on two problems: understanding the lung as a fluid mechanics organ, and the second is applying machine learning and data science and artificial intelligence to furthering the knowledge in fluid dynamics. So how did I get to this point? Lung was not my calling, 40 years ago. But over time, I have evolved to get to that point. Evolution is not a crime, but doing something at any point of time that you are only rather halfway interested in because some other persuasion is calling you is doing yourself injustice. That's the point I want to make. So I have a list of, I got this from our JEE chairman. Last year, there was a AAR 15 last year, chose to study electrical engineering at IIT Bombay. Okay. There was an All India rank 458 that chose to study mechanical engineering at IIT Madras. There was a rank 304, am I right with that number, that chose to study aerospace engineering at IIT Madras. 304, I can't remember the exact thing. 817 that chose to study aerospace engineering in IIT Bombay. Now, the reason I mentioned these particular cases is I consider these as evidences where they exerted their mind. They didn't go by one table that is pre-published somewhere and just ran with the pre-published table. Likewise, you exert your mind. We tend to discount our own mind in place of crowd wisdom. That table is crowd wisdom, right? The table published on the JE website, opening, closing ranks, is the crowd wisdom. But are you a part of the crowd or are you also a human being? Think about that. It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy question to answer. But if there is a calling that is sufficiently strong, like that 800 ranker who went to IIT Bombay Aerospace Engineering, he could have gotten other branches as per the table that we are talking about. But that person chose a particular branch for whatever their calling is. Okay?
So at least, he's still continuing in mechanics. Right? For me, I did my undergrad in electronics and communication engineering. And then I worked in a software company. And then I did my master's in biomedical engineering at IIT Madras. And my PhD was in exercise science, kinesiology, focusing on neuroscience of human movement. And for the last 18 years or so, I've been working on, mechanics of hand and finger function. Now, I'm almost a full professor. I'm looking at how long are we going to do this? What next for me? And I'm looking at, moving on to other fields. So that's evolution. So it's not like 20 years ago when I started out, 23 years ago when I started out, or more than 25 years ago when I started out, that I could predict this is what I wanted to do. So evolution is, it happens, and as long as you are continuing to learn, so every day for me is a new experience, is a new learning. As long as that keeps me engaged, that gives me the fun, it's great. So that part of 40 years can I do? What that means is that, can you keep challenging yourself? That doesn't mean that you will have to do mechanical engineering all your life or electrical engineering all your life. What that means is that, is it something that will keep you engaged? That's what he meant. No? Is that a correct interpretation? Or yeah. So that this we will continue with questions.
Actually, I wanted to mention few things first. So we got a rank of 137. So we could pursue any computer science branch anywhere. So, but we wanted to go with AIDA with IIT Madras. So I always had a thought in mind that are we doing right, or are we doing like why are we not going with the crowd like CSC? After hearing your words, we currently I'm pretty much sure that what we want to do. So coming with AIDA, the field is evolving every few months. Like it's been evolving every few months since last 2 to 3 years. So the curriculum, we can pretty much say that it's evolving. So the courses and everything should also evolve with this, right? So how I am going to look into this curriculum right now? Like, will it evolve with the AI, or will it be fixed in next 4 years?
4 years is too long for a field like AI, right? So, and it is, in fact, if I said 4 years is too long for civil engineering, would you believe that? Today you will not believe me, right? If I told you civil engineering today versus civil engineering 4 years from now, you cannot imagine. It will be very different. You're not, it's like, what is this fellow talking? Civil engineering has been here for 200 years. It's going to be the same. But every field is evolving. AI seems to be evolving on a time scale that I can see with my eyes. Right? So there's an old saying, when an elephant is born, you can pick up that elephant cub, apparently. I have not picked one up, but I have seen videos of the elephant cub being picked up by a human being. You can, if you are daily picking up that cub, you can pick up that cub for about 6-7 months. But if you picked up the cub when the cub was born and you come back 6 months later, you will not be able to pick up that cub. AI is a bit like the first. If you are constantly in that field, forget the curriculum. The curriculum is there to only provide you the basics. For example, in a BTech in AIDA, the core emphasis will be on basic statistics, basic mathematical foundations of data science, basic neural networks, what is a pre-trained transformer. These are ideas that are not going to go away. As an idea, they're not going to go away. They're going to morph into something continually, right? So most good engineering curricula are there to provide you the basic foundation using which you can re-engineer yourself every 4-5 years to be relevant to the society of that time. This is true of all disciplines. For example, with aerospace engineering, I think 5 years from now, aerospace engineering that we know today will be very different from what will be 5 years from now. Okay, now, but the mathematical foundations of a flying machine are not changing. The fundamental ideas behind a flying machine are not changing. So the engineering curricula broadly focus on only that layer.
I have one more question too. Being an IIT myself, I know how much the research values into a person like life. So as I say, like AI is evolving and everything. And I have gone through IIT Madras all research papers, what the professors have written and everything. Most of them are related to like biomedical and those stuff. So, but as he and like we are more interested into robotics and those type of things. So, like, will IIT Madras help us in that field, or like
Sure,
how should we?
I think Varadan, you probably also know. So the broad foundations of research at IIT Madras obviously includes robotics and biomedical engineering. So there's as much robotics happening at IIT Madras as anywhere else in the world, if that's what you want to.
Actually, there are quite a few departments across which robotics is done in IIT Madras. Engineering design, mechanical engineering, even in our own department, there are several departments that do robotics at various levels. So it depends on what robotics. There are industrial robotics, there are medical grade robotics, surgical robots that are being built, and our own colleague is building this haptics, which is also a surgical training robot. So it's a huge field with a huge scope to build, as in build your own product, build your own startup. Those are multi-billion-dollar opportunities. Yes.
And like one more thing is like there is a student exchange programs, right? Like IIT Madras has signed MOUs with so many universities across the world. So how this thing going to look like? Are there any CGPA limits or any other things which we need to follow?
I think Nikhil will speak about that
Okay.
in more detail later. But to start with, we have about 300 plus MOUs signed with various universities. And there are some screening criteria. Students apply, and if, say, for example, they have space for 5 students, and say 8 students have applied, universities do use screening criteria to take the top 5, and usually CGPA does play a crucial part in that decision making process. So yeah.
Thank you, professors.